In the quiet hush of a world long past, our planet entered a profound and icy slumber. This was the Ice Age, a time when colossal sheets of ice, miles thick, crept across the continents, swallowing landscapes and reshaping the very face of the earth. A deep, enduring cold descended, a stillness that would test the limits of all living things. Imagine a world painted in shades of white and blue. Vast, silent tundras stretched to the horizon, where the only movement was the whisper of wind across endless snow. Forests, once vibrant with life, stood frozen and brittle, their branches heavy with ice, like crystal sculptures under a pale, distant sun. In this frozen kingdom, survival became a desperate art, a daily battle against an unforgiving climate. For millions of years, life had thrived in a world of warmth and abundance. Great beasts roamed fertile plains, and dense jungles pulsed with energy. But the Ice Age changed everything. The rules of survival were rewritten overnight. The once mighty were now vulnerable, and the small and resilient found new, unexpected strengths. The great megafauna, the giants of this ancient world, faced the harshest trial. Woolly mammoths, with their magnificent curved tusks and thick, shaggy coats, were icons of this era. They roamed in herds, their heavy footfalls muffled by the snow, their breath misting in the frigid air. They were built for the cold, but even they struggled as the ice advanced, shrinking the grasslands they depended on for food. The earth beneath their feet, once soft and yielding, turned to frozen iron. Close behind them followed the saber-toothed cats, Smilodon, with their fearsome, dagger-like canines. These powerful predators were masters of the hunt, but their prey was dwindling. The giant ground sloths, slow-moving mountains of fur and muscle, found fewer and fewer leaves to browse. Glyptodonts, armadillo-like creatures the size of a small car, were protected by a thick, bony shell. But even that could not shield them from the relentless, creeping cold and starvation. Every day was a challenge. Finding a single patch of unfrozen grass or a branch not encased in ice could mean the difference between life and death. The air, thin and sharp, burned the lungs. Water, the source of all life, was locked away in an impassable fortress of ice. Rivers slowed to a crawl, and lakes froze solid to their depths. Animals would travel for miles, driven by a primal thirst, only to find more frozen wasteland. As the glaciers advanced, they acted like giant, slow-moving bulldozers, grinding mountains into dust and carving deep valleys. This dramatic reshaping of the land altered ecosystems forever. The familiar territories and migration routes that had been used for generations simply vanished. Herds were cut off, populations became isolated, and the delicate web of life began to tear apart. The genetic diversity that is so crucial for a species' resilience began to shrink. Not all species were giants, of course. Smaller creatures, too, fought their own desperate battles. The woolly rhinoceros, a solitary and formidable beast, used its massive horn to sweep away snow in search of frozen vegetation. But as the winters grew longer and the snows deeper, this became an exhausting, often fruitless, task. The colossal Irish elk, with its incredible 12-foot antlers, found the dense, frozen forests increasingly difficult to navigate. Its magnificent adornment became a liability, a beautiful but deadly burden. The changing climate was a silent, invisible killer. It wasn't just the cold, it was the chain reaction it set off. Less sunlight reached the Earth's surface, stunting plant growth. This meant less food for herbivores, which in turn meant less food for carnivores. The entire food chain, from the smallest plant to the most fearsome predator, was under immense strain. The world was slowly starving. For so many, the end was quiet and drawn out. It was not a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a slow, grinding attrition. It was the exhaustion of a mammoth that could no longer find enough food to sustain its massive frame. It was the last, lonely call of a giant sloth that found itself isolated from its kind. It was the final shiver of a creature succumbing to the endless cold, its body slowly covered by a gentle, uncaring blanket of snow. Fossil records tell a poignant story of this great decline. In the frozen earth of Siberia and the tar pits of La Brie, we find the remains of these lost giants. Their bones are a silent testament to their struggle, a snapshot of a world where survival was a daily miracle. They show us creatures that were perfectly adapted to their environment, only to have that environment betray them. They were not failures. They were simply caught in a global climate shift of a magnitude beyond their control. But amidst this great freezing, a new story was beginning. A different kind of creature, less physically imposing but uniquely adaptable, was learning to navigate this treacherous new world. Early humans. They lacked the thick fur of the mammoth or the sharp claws of the cave lion. They were vulnerable, small figures in a vast, intimidating landscape. Yet they possessed something more powerful than any physical defense, a curious and innovative mind. They watched the world, they learned from it, and they began to change their relationship with it. They learned to hunt in coordinated groups, to bring down animals many times their size. They learned to use bone and stone to craft tools, needles for sewing warm clothing from animal hides, and sharper spear points for the hunt. And then they made a discovery that would change their destiny and the course of history forever. Fire. In the deep, biting cold of an ice age night, a small group huddled together, their faces illuminated by a flickering, magical light. Fire was warmth against the killing cold. It was a light that pushed back the terrifying darkness. It was a weapon that kept nocturnal predators at bay. It was a tool that could cook food, making it safer to eat and easier to digest, unlocking crucial nutrients. This small, controlled flame was a beacon of hope in the frozen wilderness. Around these campfires, a new kind of society began to form. Stories were told, knowledge was passed down, and bonds were strengthened. The hearth became the center of human existence, a symbol of community, ingenuity, and defiance against the overwhelming forces of nature. While the great beasts of the Ice Age were locked in a losing battle with the climate, humans were learning to master it. They were not just surviving. They were adapting, innovating, and beginning to thrive. As the millennia passed, the great ice sheets began their slow retreat. The planet started to warm, and the world began to thaw. Meltwater carved new rivers, and life, tenacious and resilient, started to return to the barren lands. But it was a different world. The giants were gone. The mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, the ground sloths, their time had passed. Their skeletons, frozen in time, are all that remain of their reign. The story of the Ice Age is a somber reminder of how fragile life can be, how even the most dominant species can be brought low by forces beyond their control. But it is also a story of incredible resilience. In the shadow of the vanishing giants, new forms of life emerged, and humanity, armed with fire and intellect, stood ready to inherit a new world. As the first rays of a new dawn touched the horizon, casting a golden glow over a waking landscape, we are reminded of a timeless truth. The world changes, empires of ice rise and fall, and species disappear into the mists of time. But through it all, one thing remains constant. Life always finds a way. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the deep past. If you enjoyed this story, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more explorations into the history of our world. Sleep well.